Hi guys, this is Vivian Reed and welcome to my channel. Now, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to like. Now, on this video, when gifts were handed out for extraordinary voices, this gentleman certainly got his. I mean, his voice is so incredible, and his range, and it's about how he's taken care of his voice. So as you know by now, these videos are information for young people coming into the business, or people already in the business, older people already in the business who just need a little bit of guidance. He's done Broadway. He's a recording artist. He's done many theaters. He's concertized. I mean, and don't let me forget this. He is the voice of one of the main characters on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Shy Baldwin. You know, I was looking at it, and I didn't expect to see Darius's face. And there he was. In the beginning of one of the episodes, they literally show him singing some of these songs. And that was such a joy for me to watch. So, dariusdehaas. How you doing, Darius?
Hello, how are you, Miss Vivian Reed? Thank you so much.
Oh, listen, honey, I'm so happy that you could do this because you're not everyone who has been given a gift. And, you know, there are singers and then there are singers. And you're one of them, then there are singers persons. Your gift is extraordinary. But over the years, you have taken care of that gift. And we know that if you party too much, you do drugs, you smoke, and you do all of these things, that it can wreak havoc on your very special gift. So, Darius, I'm just going to ask you straight up front. How have you kept your gift so strong, so wonderful? I don't see much difference from when I first heard you sing years ago when we were both younger, and you're younger than I am. And now, I mean, tell us, what's some of the things that you do?
Well, I mean, Vivian, first of all, it's just such a privilege to do what we do. And I think as one gets older, you know, when you're younger and you discover that you can do all these things and you are discovering all the ways in which you can apply it, you know, as a singer, and singing all these different styles and getting the attention for it and all of that stuff. You feel like you're invincible, you know? And I was always fortunate to have figures in my life who, either by watching them through example, meaning my mother or my uncle, Andy
Yes.
Bay, or my mother Geraldine DeHaas,
Geraldine.
or my aunt Salome Bay, or so I had great, and you, Vivian. I mean, you
Oh,
worked with my mother and Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope all those years ago when you came to Chicago after doing Umbrella. And so I would watch and I would study. I'm a real student of our craft. And then when I got a little older, I had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful voice teacher, Tom Parisi, who I studied with up until he just could no longer teach or live in New York. And he was moved back to his hometown in Ohio. And he really instilled, I'd say from a technical standpoint, he instilled in me great principles to live by. And he said, Darius, you know, with a good technique, you can sing anything, really be mindful of where the sound lives when you're singing certain things in different parts of your voice. And he would take me through all these different exercises and stuff. And Vivian, it really didn't dawn on me what the full grounding of what he was doing until many years later. And I was with him from 1990 up until 2019.
Wow, that's a long time.
And
Wow.
you know, and there were on and off periods, you know, there times where, you know, where I was traveling and, you know, so I wouldn't see him for long stretches of time. But, you know, I would always come back and he would get me back to basics and get me back on my axis if I felt I was off my axis. I was always fortunate in that I never suffered any serious vocal damage or anything like that. Um, but it really is, you know, you have to be good to your instrument, and you have to get sleep, and you have to, if there's certain vices that you have that are detrimental to it, you know, see if you can curb them at least for the time that you have to seriously sing them, whether it's smoking or if you like to get high or if you drink coffee or, you know, whatever, you know, it's different things, you know. It really is a discipline, and it's a muscle. The voice is a muscle.
It is a muscle.
And
Those two folds down there, they are muscles. And just like you
yeah.
said, you have to take care of them. And you know, when you have good technique and it's in place, diaphragmatic breathing and all the things that go along with executing wonderful sound, you can do a lot with your voice, but first you have to get to that point. But if all you're doing is hanging on, and I'm going to tell you now, honey, I tried marijuana 4 times when I was young. Each time, the next morning, I couldn't sing. So I
Yeah,
figured
it
out
dries you
real
out.
quick after 4 times, ooh, this is not for you. Okay? This is not for you, because for me, just like you, God gave me a gift, and you got to figure
Sure
out.
did give you a gift.
Oh, thank you. You have to figure out which is more important, your addiction to a substance or your gift. You have to figure that out, because if the substance, the addiction is more important, guaranteed, I'm telling y'all, as you get older, that gift ain't quite
Yeah,
gonna be there.
you
It's
feel
not gonna be there.
the results of that. Yeah.
You do see the results of that. And yes, doing a show with your mother, Geraldine DeHaas, and Darius, for you listening, those of you young people listening, he comes from a strong musical family, and they were all great. Your sister,
Yeah.
Aisha, fabulous singer.
Yes.
So, you know, for you, and I'm going to tell you, when they had whichever anniversary it was for Bubbling Brown Sugar, I think it was the 30th, and you sang Sophisticated Lady, Lord,
Oh, I loved doing that.
woo,
Ugh.
Lord, don't let me get up here
That
and
was a
shout.
lot of fun. And you know what was really wonderful for me is that I believe it was Ebony. I think it was Ebony Joanne who went to the musical director and said, you know, give him some space. Just give him some space. You're kind of playing all over him. She did it in a very lovely way.
Oh, of
She didn't
course.
and of course she did what I felt I couldn't do without being perceived a certain way, but she did it with such class, and I, you know, never will forget that.
But let's speak on that for a minute. I remember my first show on Broadway. Clive Barnes put with a question mark, but I got great. I got great reviews. It's the show from which I got my equity card.
What
But,
show was that?
A show called That's Entertainment.
Oh,
And it was before Bubbling, before Cope. And I remember when we had the Zitz probe, one of the songs I sang was I'll Go My Way by Myself, and it closed out the first act. So Luther Henderson said, after, and I was standing on the stage, he said, Vivian, is everything okay? I said to him, I said, oh yeah, it's a great arrangement, but I said, Luther, I feel that the trombonist who is doing ad libs he's all on top of me. Could you put him in the spaces in between the phrases? He said, oh, why didn't I think about that? Oh, sure, no problem. And then we went back and did it again, or at least the first few bars, and it was perfect. So
yeah.
I think I need for people to understand that if there is a problem, and you hit it you hit it right on the nail. It's all in how you approach that director, how you
Mm-hmm.
approach that choreographer, how you approach that musical director. Because you can be nasty and you ain't gonna get nowhere, and you keep on being nasty, you're gonna get fired. But
Yeah.
having said all that, if there is something that's bothering you and that you feel could aid you in your delivery, you can approach a director. You can approach a
Yeah.
musical director. You can approach a choreographer. So just know that, because I did it long before, as they say, I had nuisance power. Darius, that your version of sophisticated, or at least the way you sang it, was just it was just masterful. I've
Oh,
never heard it like that since. But I think you alluded to the fact of when you're on top of your game and when you've had developed very, very good technique, the things that you can do, how you can manipulate your vocal sound to suit whatever song you're singing, and a key, half step up, half step down, can make all the
mhm.
difference.
My voice teacher was such a godsend. And
And that's special because there are a lot of bad teachers out there.
yeah. And the reason that they're bad, in part, I think, is because they try to impose a certain thing on you rather than really listening to what the student does and say,
Yes.
okay, so this is what we have. Let me meet you where you're at, and let me try to expand on that. And I cannot emphasize enough how much it is work. When you are having to sing at a certain level, in terms of Broadway, in terms of concert work, in terms of certainly opera, in terms of working your technique, working just the muscles of it, and everything. It is work, and it can seem tedious. A lot of things aren't going to make sense to you, probably. It's like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I working these vowels? How am I? But I tell you, a lot of that stuff didn't. Again, like I said early on, didn't really come into play in terms of my understanding of it until much
Later
later.
on,
And
yes.
I was like, oh, this is what's saving me. That's what saved me.
But also, Darius, you, just like myself, and you alluded to this a few minutes ago, you can sing in several genres of music, but I think what works for you and works for me is that if someone says, I need you to sing this song and not bend a note, meaning not riff.
Hmm.
You have to sing it straight. Now, for those of you watching, much of the time, because riffing is big with a lot of these kids, they think that's how they get a song over. But a lot of times, they want to hear what the composer wrote without the benefit of you riffing all over the place. So here's what I say to that: you cannot call yourself a consummate singer if you cannot take the composer's melody, sing it, and still make people feel. If
Hmm.
your belief is that riffing is what make that's the thing that makes people feel and really gets
Hmm.
them going, you're sadly mistaken, and it's going to cost you work. Because I
Right.
think, Darius, with you, what has kept you working, and the same with myself and many others, is that what happens in one venue, let's say church, we're both
Hmm.
African Americans, what happens in church when they gonna be saying, sing it, baby, ooh, hallelujah, is not gonna necessarily happen in another club where there's a different kind of audience and they're not talking to you. So if you're not getting what you got in that church, and this is what keeps you going or makes you want to perform on stage, there's something wrong.
Right.
You should be able to go in each of these different venues and still function. I get joy every time I open up my mouth, no matter what has been asked of
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Because why? First of all, I love my sound, and I love performance. I love lyrics. I love
Hmm.
finding what that song means to me. What are the layers that I can put on that song, the colors that's going to make an audience riveted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is our job, or should be our
Hmm.
job when you come into this business. Now, yes, Darius has an extraordinary voice, but it does not take a voice like mine, a voice like yours, Darius, to become a great performer.
Right.
I tell my students that
Absolutely.
all the time. You do not have to be a great singer to be a great performer.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be, but you must. Everyone in this business, if you care about being on the stage, because don't forget that audience has paid to see you.
Hmm.
Like if it's in a nightclub, a concert, whatever, in the theater. So it's incumbent upon you that you give that audience your very best. Now, what does that entail? That means you sitting down with your music, whatever you're planning for your show, and figure out how can you put your voice in that particular song. What is the
Hmm.
meaning of that song? What can I do that's fresh? Where the audience can say, oh yeah, I heard so and so. Didn't they have a hit off of that? But they're hearing something fresh, something different. And in your shows, Darius, now Darius has created, how many one man shows do you have, Darius?
Oh, I've created so many, but when I started in kind, like when it was able to get a little bit more exposure, the first one was the music of Billy Strayhorn.
It's excellent,
The music of Billy,
excellent.
and so of course I picked one of the hardest composers.
Yes, he's hard, he's difficult. Ooh, Lord.
But it was intentional. I wanted to pick someone black, someone who was not as celebrated, particularly not in our theater circles, because at the time, because it was just after we had done Marie Christine.
We'll talk
It
about
was
that in a
just
second.
yeah, it was just after we had done Marie Christine. So I was formulating this in my head, and Ira Weitzman, who was our line producer, he says, they're creating this American Songbook series for Center, and they've already done a season. I would like, he heard me talking about it. I was asking people about it and everything, and about, Billy Strayhorn. Should I do Billy Strayhorn? I'm reading about Billy Strayhorn, and he said, "Do it. I want you to do a Billy Strayhorn content." And I was like, "All right, now I have to really create." So, uh, apropos to everything you just said, Vivian, I I took time away. And I was like, oh boy, I'm taking time away from everything else. I didn't audition for much of anything. I didn't do much of any other stuff. I really concentrate because, to your point, I had to really learn those songs well, not just learn people's interpretations of it, or and that was including my uncle who sings the heck out of Billy Strayhorn, or all these different things. I had to really sit down and learn Lush Life, really learn it. I had to sit down and really learn Something to Live For, another great song. I had to sit down and really learn and then discover all this treasure trove of stuff that people didn't really know. So it was a big risk because, with, most of us who may have been known mainly for musical theater, and we're sort of going outside the box and going, well, I'm going to bring some jazz into this, or bring some, yeah, who are you singing this for? So I was challenging a lot of that, and that's sort of my thing. There
But
is,
I think that's the plus for
yeah,
you in your career, that you are not, and I am not, a one trick pony.
right, right. And I tell you, singing Billy Strayhorn, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it at the time. It probably was one of the most fortunate decisions that I made because it was so hard.
I know.
It was so hard that it forced me to have to focus in a way that whatever I did afterwards, I was like, okay, I have to go at it with that focus. The music may not be as challenging, or it might be very challenging another way, but after doing, and also just appealing. You mentioned Luther Henderson also. May God rest his soul.
Yes.
He, knew Billy Strayhorn very well. They worked on a musical together, Rose-Colored Glasses. He invited me to his house. We sat and talked. He was very, very pointed about his feelings about the music, and was very pointed about making sure I didn't fall into certain bad habits and weird ways of thinking about it. He's like, just, he really was so helpful. He was
Yes.
so helpful. I was so fortunate, but it really set me on my way, and to really help me really find my voice. It really also, because another thing in the musical theater, we are sometimes, pretty much all the time, put in a box. And I
Yes.
was put in the box of, okay, well, you're a high black male tenor. So all my colleagues in my generation, we were all being kind of lumped together. And if this person wasn't going to do it, it's like, oh, well, get Darius to do it and make them sing it just the way this other person sang it again. And at the time, as, the actor, as the, trying to, be a game player and or team player, I meant to say, a team player, you go with it or whatever. But I always knew in the back of my head, I was like, I don't want to totally just be in this road and then burn out once they decide to move on to someone else. So, oh, well, this person sings even higher. This person sings, there was just something I intrinsically knew for myself that I said, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to cultivate other parts of my voice. I'm going to cultivate my ear. I'm going to cultivate my musical skill. And so I can have, I don't know where it's going to take me, but what that did, what singing the Billy Strayhorn, and then subsequently I did a Stevie Wonder concert
Yes.
that was very successful for me, and really that really gave me my concert career. The Billy Strayhorn and the Stevie Wonder concerts, they gave me my concert career.
And two
And
totally different
and
deliveries. Oh my
polar
God.
polar opposite. So it's like,
Polar
how's he going to do
opposites.
this? How's he going to do this?
Because
But
obviously you were riffing a bit in the Stevie Wonder. I mean, that brought out a whole
yeah,
another thing that is required, well, not overly, but is required in that type of music. Totally different. But you
but
had
I
the
oh,
ability to be able to do it.
but also to your point that you brought up earlier about really leaning into the lyrics and really getting into, because he wrote such, particularly in the 70s, those albums, I love those albums of the 70s and that Stevie Wonder did. And so really leaning into the lyrical content as well as the melodic, we deconstructed that stuff. I was just in an interview prior to this interview earlier, a couple of hours earlier, and it was the bass player George Farmer who played on that concert, as well as my Strayhorn concerts. And he said, Darius, you took us through it. Meaning, it was demanding, because I said, this is not Stevie Wonder wedding band. I don't want an imitation of Stevie Wonder. I don't sing like Stevie Wonder. And, but what I needed it to have, I wanted to honor it with the energy that is infused in that music. I couldn't be laid back about it. I couldn't approach it quite like Strayhorn, but it has to have that energy and that passion in which a lot of that music was written, in that post 60s, Black is Beautiful, post Vietnam. He was, his musical over was in response to all of that in that period. We listen to Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, and all. So, it's brilliant writing. It's brilliant writing. And so I really wanted to lean into the energy of that and find how we can deconstruct the arrangements and all that stuff. And it, again, stretched me as a vocalist in a different, and again, I was very blessed to have people like Richard Cummings, who was my original musical director, and then Daryl Waters came in at one point. And, so it was, those things really stretched me as a singer. And then you go back to class with my voice teacher, and it's like, okay, let's get it back on your axis, because, it's a lot. It's very rangy. It's can be punishing. But if you sing with good tech, it is my belief that you can really sing anything. But I want to ask you something, Vivian. You know, for people who are extremely naturally gifted, and I don't know your background in terms of, but I get a sense that you always sang, or
I
that you
did.
had a very natural gift. And what is your feeling on people who are so prodigiously gifted? You know, like someone like, say, Whitney Houston, who I love. I
Well,
love.
she was my favorite singer, and I was just horrified
Oh,
when things started to happen to her voice. That she
yeah.
brought basically on herself, because her addiction was more important to her than her gift. But she was my favorite singer. I mean, hands down.
I mean,
But for me, I was born a classical singer. But by growing up in the Baptist church, I had that feeling. But Darius, when I switched over, when I decided I did not want to sound like a classical singer trying to sing pop or trying to sing R&B or trying to sing gospel, I just went the whole 9 yards. But by doing that, I had problems for almost 10 years straight before it finally switched over. Now, years later, I can turn on the classical like this, but there was a point I couldn't. That suffered. The belt was strong, but the
mm,
classical suffered because you're talking about two different things that happen with your
hmm.
vocal folds. Classical is more open, and the chances of you getting hoarse, unless you have a really bad teacher who has not instructed you correctly, is very slim. The chances of you
Hmm.
getting hoarse in pop music, R&B, gospel are very high. So if your
Hmm.
thing is really not together, because in that kind of singing, your chords are literally slamming together like this when you belt.
Yes.
And so you have to have good breathing technique and all that behind you. But my vocal folds went through hell. Now, I've not studied since Juilliard, because I studied, because in classical music you have to study, study, study. It's just like classical dance. You never stop studying. But my vocal, I mean, I had been studying since the age of 8. So my technique was just firmly,
Very solid.
yeah, oh, please. I mean, by 13, baby, I was studying at 8. 8, honey. And so if it wasn't in place, something was wrong. And by the time I was 13, I could sing in 3 languages. But like I said, my whole upbringing during that period of my life was strictly classical. And wait, baby, you're talking about, there was an opera singer across the street, right? And she sort of took me under her wing, so she would give me albums by Maria Callas and what's our Leontine Price and Roberta Peters, and
Mm.
so I would vocalize 2 hours a day, and but so would she, and she lived across the street. Do you know they called the cops on us? Because they said we were disturbing the peace. But what I'm
You all were
saying
probably
is,
so loud.
oh yeah, we were loud. We're going on, so all this stuff.
Yeah.
But do I regret having switched over? No, not at all, because I love, especially for nightclub and concerts, I love the opportunity that's afforded me to get close to the audience and to be able to talk with them. And no, that is not theater. You have a script, or maybe it's a review. So you just can't go willy-nilly saying
Right.
whatever you want. I mean, because the musical is the musical, the book show is the book show.
Right.
So, but I love that fact, and I have no regrets. But what I'm grateful for, Darius, is the training.
Hmm.
It gave me everything, the
Hmm.
discipline, everything. And but let's talk about that, and then I want to get to Marie Christine in a second.
Good.
When we talk about the discipline, and this is for those of you listening in, a lot of it is just common sense. And I have spoken about this so many times in these
Hmm.
conversations. Don't be coming to rehearsals late. Get there early enough so that you can warm up and be ready to start at the appointed time, which is usually 10 in the morning. When take notes. as the day progresses, when they're working on your scenes or your numbers, so that you write down. And yes, the stage manager does write down all staging, but you can't depend on that. And he probably or she doesn't probably want you to depend on that. So take your own notes. So when you get home, you at some point can pull out your script and start working, rehearsing what you learned that day, so that when you go into rehearsal the next day, they can proceed on. No, go ahead.
It must have been drummed into me very early on in terms of how to work in the theater realm, in terms of writing notes and stage directions. And I can't even remember, but because I have a whole system for myself, particularly when I have to learn a show very quickly.
Yes.
Or if like with Rent, I had to cover 6 people.
You were the swing?
Yeah, I was a swing on Rent. I covered 6 people.
Wow.
6 people, and went on for each and every one of them often. And that show really, I didn't learn about taking notes, that was a skill that I already had, but I tell you, that was the show that really put it to the test, because when you can learn where 6 different people are on stage all at once, where you know that, okay, Gilles is crossing here and Tay goes up here and then Jesse goes there and then Wilson is doing that cross there. But it gave me great respect for craft. It also gave me great respect for, yes, common sense, showing up ready, prepared, on time, and so that people do not have to worry. A life in this industry, not just theater, but in entertainment, is hard. You are not indispensable. You need to be able to show up and do what you can do to the best of your ability. Strictly speaking, as a singer, and particularly if you've had the great fortune of being able to work at your craft and be able to be a working performer for many years, knowing how, getting the sense of how the body shifts, of how voices shift, how you need to really pay attention to how you may have done something 10 years ago and how you may not be able to do it in the same way.
Stop right there. Please stop right there. Did you hear what he just said? This is for some of you older ones watching. Listen. When I did God Bless the Child on Broadway, I did it in the key of A. It is now in G. As you get older, most lose slight elasticity, and that's just, it's just the way the body is.
Yeah.
Things change. So why exactly, when you know that you cannot hit those notes the same, why would you put that in a show in the same key and then have people cringing in their seats, hoping that you will hit that note? That is the worst thing for an audience, to be nervous for you as a singer. And I've been in that, where I've sat in an audience, knew that the key was wrong that the person was in. And I said, oh Lord, are they going to hit this note? And 9 times out of 10, they didn't hit that note.
Well, that has to do with a lot of things. That's ego. That is really not reckoning with certain things within yourself. And everyone's journey is very specific and very, very different. But that has to do with a lot of stuff. But I have witnessed people who are fantastic performers, fantastic singers, very unique singers, and have seen them go through a certain kind of change that, all right, they haven't discovered for themselves what they need to do in order to still sing this material. They haven't, because it is a very physical, and we all go through it. As far as I know, we all go through it.
I've gone through it.
And and it really means it's just, and it really also means just having some compassion for yourself. I think, because also, if you do theater and other things too, and And if you're used to being told by people, well, people won't like you if unless they know that you're gonna sing that note or that you're
Oh,
gonna
see,
sing that way or you're gonna be and so we get these certain things drummed into us. So I was, you know what? How do I own my power? How do
yes.
I use my agency wisely
Mm-hmm.
and shift it and then put it back out there and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and culture, and this takes time. This isn't like, eureka.
But wait a
This
minute.
takes time.
If you feel that your voice has changed, and I'm talking to the more mature people watching this, if you feel that your voice has changed, understand this. It is better that you get together with your musical director or someone, who can play for you and you all bring down that key. You see how you like it because
Mhm.
what the audience ain't gonna know. All they care about is how did you deliver that song. But I will guarantee you, you keep that in the same key and you struggling to hit them notes, that's what they're gonna remember
And
after
here's
your
another,
show.
and here's another thing. Not only will the audience not always know, sometimes people who are musical directors, they don't know anything about singing.
Child, please. Now let's talk about Marie Christine. Marie Christine by Michael John LaCusa
Yes.
is I call it a contemporary opera, okay, regardless of what
Yeah.
Michael called it. He was calling it musical theater. I so enjoyed doing that show. This is with Audra McDonald starring,
Hmm.
and everybody in that show, connected with that show in terms of the cast, they were just great
Yeah.
singers. You couldn't be anything but. Not
Yeah. You
only as
you
a
had to
singer,
really.
you had to bring it. You had to know music. You had to have all of this stuff because this show was difficult as hell. But when
Right.
it all came together, oh my God, what did you think, Darius?
Well, all of that, and then on top of that, you had to know how to act because you're
Ooh,
telling
Lord! That's
a
right.
Creole version of Medea.
Medea, that's right.
So it's not light. It's not light. So you had to have a certain command there. I'm going to tell you a little story about you.
Well, okay, I'm ready. Ooh.
I witnessed you working on it on your own because you had
You
found a
did?
rehearsal room. You had found a rehearsal room, and I remember
Yeah.
you were really working that part of what was it? Da, 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 da,
Oh,
da, da,
yes.
da, 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 da,
Da-da-dum,
da, 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 da,
da-da-da-dum.
da, for the miracles of love.
Yeah, he wrote
That
that
was written for
specifically for
you.
me. So he wrote it around what I could do vocally.
He wrote that
The
thing
hell of that
so
song.
up
Oh my
and
God.
through your
Yes, he
passaggio.
did.
And I loved listening to that thing every night. I was like,
Oh,
because you were down there. And then
yes.
you were, and I remember you working it in the rehearsal room. And I was like, wow, he really wrote that for Vivian.
Yeah, he did.
I really love that song.
But
Really
honey,
fascinating.
no turning back.
Oh God.
What? When
That
you
high.
went up to that high note,
Ooh.
I was done. Just stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Oh
That
my
was
God.
just, but here again, for you wonderful people watching, when you are on top of your game, there's so much that this industry has to offer.
Hmm.
But you got to be ready
You got to
when the
be ready.
call comes. See,
Yeah.
we could do that show, Marie Christine. Why? Because we were ready. It was in our thing. It was in us to have the kind of technique to be able to pull that off. That's why it is worth it if you luck up on a really good teacher to just practice, work on honing those
Hmm.
skills because I'm telling you, the payoff is invaluable.
I tell you, my voice teacher was so thrilled when I got that show because he was
He
like, "Ooh,
was.
ooh," he was like, "Oh, we got something really good to work." Yeah, he really whipped me into shape. He really whipped me and gave me tools for even when I wasn't seeing him. I had to learn how to work, not only just learning the show, but really learning how to do what was demanded of us vocally 8 times a week.
8 times a week.
8 times a week. And that was no joke. That was no joke. I loved doing that show.
I did too.
I loved it.
So before we bring this to a close, let me just ask you this. If, say for instance, your vocal folds, it gets irritated, what in particular do you do? So, because I know I get calls all the time, Vivian, my voice, what can I do? So what do you do?
Always be mindful of how hard you're singing. So just pace yourself.
What about drinking? Is anything, any teas, any special teas, or
I keep it very simple. Hot water, honey and lemon, or just or just lemon.
Yeah.
Or just lemon. I have a really bad up until, I mean, I still have them, but up until the pandemic, I suffered really horribly from allergies and post-nasal drip and all this other stuff. And I had discovered oregano oil. And
wait a minute, hold it now. Oregano oil, what exactly does that do?
Oregano oil, it opens you up.
Oh, Lord!
It opens up all
Let me put this down, oregano oil.
But not everyone likes it, Vivian, because it's intense.
Because it's very, very strong.
Yeah, it's very strong. So, you can get it as a tincture, where you can just, it's a couple of drops, but you might need to cut it with some honey and lemon.
What do you do? Okay, so you put the couple of drops in hot water, warm water?
In hot water.
Okay.
I would recommend it in hot water. I mean, I'm one of those crazy people who will take it straight, loosens up all of that stuff.
Really? I'm going to try it.
Yeah, you've never had oregano oil.
No, but I'm going to try it.
It's intense. Cleaning out the sinuses. I'm a fan of the Navage.
Oh, I have a Navage.
Navage.
Wonderful.
I'm a fan of the Navage. More so than the neti pot.
The neti pot. I totally agree.
I have used alkalol.
Alkalol. What is that?
Alkalol, not alcohol. Alkalol.
No, you said alcohol. No, I know you did.
I take a little nip.
So what is that?
A little nip now. Alkalol. It's like this sort of thing that you gargle with, but it's specifically for, when you're having sinus stuff or irritable stuff in your throat or whatever. You're not meant to swallow. You gargle. You use it like a gargle rinse, or you can heat it up a little bit and take it in each nostril.
Okay, and what about this? Because I know a lot of singers suffer with this, and Lord knows I do. Billy Porter does. Have you ever suffered with acid reflux?
Oh yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's rough.
It had me thinking that I was losing my voice, because the thing is, where that acid hits on your vocal folds, you can't really sing over that. It's like it weakens that part.
Yeah.
What I had to do is I had to change my diet. Yeah. I mean, I still eat. I definitely stay away from tomatoes. I don't do spicy anymore, or orange juice. I had to stop all of that. But I will have my fun every now and then. But I will tell you, I would say probably 3 weeks before a show, I'm on the good foot. Because the way I use my voice and the range, I can't afford to have that acid coming up in my throat acting crazy.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of things. I depending on what I'm doing, if it's a very intensive sing, if it's a big sing, if it's something for a concentrated amount of time, there's certain things that just have to go away. And the real horrible thing about acid reflux, other than the foods and stuff that you would eat, is also, it's also brought on by stress. How do you manage your stress as well? And the worst for me actually was, I was doing a production of Guys and Dolls out here in Bucks County at the Bucks County Playhouse, playing Nicely Johnson. And, and he has people on, sit down, you're rocking the boat, and all that stuff. And that requires you to really be very straight ahead. I mean, because people, the musical theater, everyone loves sit down your own. So people expect to hear it in a very particular way. Um, and so you have to honor that. And then, you can still do your thing with it within a certain parameter. But well, first of all, it's just, the out here in Bucks County with mold and all that stuff, and theaters in general are kind of filthy anyway. So with the air conditioning and the dryness and all that stuff. So I was going through all of that, and it was in the summer, so allergies were coming up. So I would have postnasal drip and the acid reflux.
Ooh.
So it was like this.
Yeah.
Coming from both directions.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I really was like, okay, I had to really get in a certain routine. And then during the run of the show, I got cast for a Shakespeare in the Park at the Delacorte, playing Duke Sr. for As You Like It, in a musical version of As You Like It. And they had me singing so high.
Oh my
Shayna
God.
Taub, who I adore. But she kind of wrote the score. I think she wrote it a little bit with my voice in mind.
With your voice in mind.
So, but
and you were having problems at this particular time.
So I was having to do Guys and Dolls, and then in rehearsal, starting rehearsal for As You Like It. And I was like, oh God, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? And then,
how did you do it? What'd you do?
Well, I just had to really pace myself and say, look, do what you can. And when it's necessary, just be honest. I say, look, I have to sing this under for a little bit because I have to save myself for tonight. And then, but what was so weird, it was so weird. For some reason, by the time I got to doing As You Like It, which, the Delacorte is outside. So you were dealing with all the elements. I was fine.
Really?
It was so strange. And I don't know, maybe once I was able to just get past the stress of it. This is why I said, acid reflux is insidious, because there's the habits that we need to get a hold of, eating wise and drinking wise, whatever. Alcohol, don't don't do the alcohol.
And let's tell them why. I know for me, and you spoke about this in the early part of the conversation. Listen, when I was young, honey, I could have 2-3 glasses of wine, go out and do a show, and that show would be all that and some chocolate cake. If I had wine today, honey, they ain't gonna be no show. You're gonna have to find out where's Vivian's over there asleep.
Yeah.
I stopped drinking. I had to stop. It dries out my vocal folds. I had to stop. I can't do it anymore.
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
Yeah. No kind of alcohol, just a lot of, and I can't also stress when you can't get your rest, get your sleep.
You have to. And get off the phone.
Yeah.
Because that's still using your vocal folds. When you talk all day long.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know how you are doing a show, but doing a show, I just tell my friends, listen, if you call me, it's going to go to machine. I said, because I have to rest my voice during the day, so I'm ready for the evening's performance. I just won't talk on the phone. And I had to make myself do that. I I used to run my mouth all the time. And the payoff was terrible, because then my voice was tired at night for the show. And I can't have that. So I'm very disciplined.
Yeah, I remember years ago what really drove that home for me. Years ago, I was auditioning for a show. And it was one of those things where you're out in the hallway and everyone is lined up to audition for it and everything. There's this one guy, and he was so busy talking to everybody. It's just, and what you singing and what you singing, and oh yeah, I love that song. And then he would start singing the song and singing and what you singing, and just talking. And he got in there and he was so sung out.
Yep.
And I was like, because you running.
You talked himself to death.
Mouth. Running your mouth.
And you went in there and blew them all away, didn't you?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. It was one of those open calls. I was called back, so that was good. Yes, I was called back. But
listen, Darius, this has been, number one, such a wonderful conversation, because I love you. I love your work ethic, and I so appreciate how you have taken care of you and
Thank you.
your gift, because not everyone does that. And they have to understand, if you have something special, you got to take care of it so that it
Yeah.
can be there years later.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there's the aging process and things do change, but you don't have to hurry it up, you
Right.
know. So you have to
Right.
take responsibility. But thank you so much for doing this, Darius.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure. And and thank you for being such an inspiration, Vivian. I mean, you
Oh,
are one of our great stars.
thank
And I
you.
hope you know that, and I hope that you know realize, or even if you don't realize, just we all we stand on your shoulders.
Oh, thank you. As I have stood on people's
Yeah.
shoulders who came before me. And I want to encourage those of you watching to go to YouTube, go to his website, and just watch his videos and check out his recordings. He is just an amazing, amazing singer and
Thank
performer.
you.
So, to all of those of you who checked out this video, thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to like. And I'll see you the next time. Okay, wave
Yay.
bye bye, Darius. Wave bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Vivian.
Yes, bye.
Bye.